Okay, let's talk about HSC burnout. Be honest, how many times have you opened that chunky maths textbook of yours, stared at that page filled with formulas for the next 30 minutes, and then closing the book up and expecting yourself to retain all that information with ease? And then coming to the realization that you didn't remember a single formula. This is a common experience among most students because most students think that trying to cram in more hours should theoretically yield to more results. But that is simply not true. Matter of fact, overstudying without proper breaks, with proper rest times, can actually hinder your performance in the long term. The UNSW study found that students who consistently studied for over 3 hours a night without proper breaks reported a 25% lower information retention rate than those who used structured study breaks. So in the next few minutes, I want to talk about the following. Number one, why most study routines are actually making you more tired than you think. Number two, what top performing students are actually doing with their study routines and breaks. And the last one probably being the most important, a simple shift in your mindset to make studying something that you actually enjoy as opposed to hating for the rest of the year. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so let's talk about the classic 6-hour study grind that some of you might be quite aware of. It's the badge of honor that a lot of you year 12 wear proudly. You feel productive as you've consumed all this content, you've gone through 5 different readings, 5 different chapters, but at the end of it, you understand absolutely nothing and you've retained no information at all. This experience probably sounds familiar to some of you, and for others you might be like, well, what is he talking about? So studies from the Australian Psychological Society show that 61% of senior school students report high stress levels during exam periods, mostly due to poor study structure and a lack of breaks. So the problem isn't necessarily with your motivation or your discipline. You could be highly motivated and highly disciplined, but still fall short. The reason you might be struggling is because of your approach or your method. The brain learns in cycles, not in these long, lengthy marathons. And so overloading it without rest, without proper breaks, actually leads to what we like to call mental fatigue or cognitive fatigue. And it makes it 20 to 30% less efficient in storing any new information you're trying to feed the brain. So instead of studying for 6 hours straight, for 3 hours straight, take those lengthy study periods and try and find a way to break them down. That could be 30-minute breakdowns, 50-minute breakdowns, even 25-minute breakdowns. It doesn't really matter. But the point is that by breaking it down into these smaller segments and putting breaks in between each one, you're going to be able to absorb a lot more content and retain it over time. You're giving your brain that ability to not fall into the trap of mental fatigue, and you're giving the brain enough time to absorb that new information and really understand before moving on to the next study session. And so this is going to be a lot faster way, a more efficient way of actually revising and making sure that you're on top of your content. So most students love to revise by doing things like rereading their notes or trying to regurgitate a lot of information that they've just memorized, or even highlighting excessively. But you need to treat your brain like you would treat your body when trying to build muscle, for example, right? Muscle is built when you experience some form of discomfort. The muscle gets shocked, per se. Now, when it comes to academics, you don't necessarily need to experience a struggle, but you have to treat your brain like a muscle. So in the context of academics, discomfort might look like doing harder practice questions, for example, right? Or going over that topic or concept that you know within yourself that you're not fully confident with, and trying to tackle that as opposed to doing all the easy things. Now, if you've ever watched this guy, you might be familiar with techniques like active recall or spaced repetition, and these two study techniques alone double your retention rates. Let's say you're studying legal studies. Legal studies is a subject that tends to have a lot of information that you need to memorize, and it's a lot of writing and a lot of information absorbing. And so again, coming back to the study techniques, you have active recall and spaced repetition. And so instead of highlighting and trying to force yourself to memorize all this content, what you should first do, and this is what I did when I was in the HSC, is I would take all the notes that I've captured so far and I would turn them into actual questions that match the syllabus. This is pretty straightforward to do, but you're essentially taking each dot point in the syllabus and turning it into some form of question. And then from there, what you do is you simply question yourself like a quiz, and you're looking for the things that you are able to recall and get right. And you're looking, of course, for the things that you can't necessarily memorize and instead have to get more familiar with the broader theme or big picture idea of the specific concept. So if I was in your position, I would download apps like Quizlet or Anki flashcards, or even use a Notion to capture your notes and turn those notes into questions. But even with the best techniques under your belt, there is still something that continues to trip Year 12 students up, which we're going to talk about now. So here's an important and honest truth that you need to understand when undertaking your Year 12 studies. And it's that whilst there is this central focus on academics, you also have to prioritize your emotional state and how you actually feel, because the HSC is an emotional roller coaster. You know, when every mark feels like it could make or break the degree that you get into and the career you decide to take on after you graduate high school, it's really easy to spiral into anxiety and into a state of absolute fear. Sure, you're studying in order to try and receive a certain mark, in order to try and get into a specific course at a specific university. Very specific, I know. But what's really important here is learning about learning. It's studying so that your future self will know how to learn anything, anywhere, anytime. Because being able to learn effectively is a skill that will serve you a lot longer than your ATAR will. Trust me, your ATAR and its value will become insignificant as the years go by. You know, you need to schedule time to do other things other than just studying. You need to give yourself the freedom and the flexibility to do things that you actually and genuinely care about. Things like socializing with your mates, getting enough hours of sleep, and even prioritizing some time for doing absolutely nothing. There's a Dutch concept called Nixon, which is essentially the art of doing nothing. And it's an extremely powerful practice to do. We live in a world where being busy equals being productive, but you need to take some time to honestly do absolutely nothing. So a simple practice that you can start doing is blocking out 1 hour each night to do absolutely nothing HSC study related. You know, walk the dog, watch an episode of your favorite Netflix show, talk to your family, talk to your friends. Let your brain take an absolute breather and give it some time to recharge its batteries. And that's it. You made it to the end of the video. Hopefully you realize from this video that the HSC isn't about the amount of hours of study you're doing, the amount of notes that you take, but more so about the systems and, you know, the structures and keeping your emotional state all in check. So if you'd like some guidance on how to build these high-performing routines and structures and systems and put them into place for the duration of your Year 12 studies, I'll leave a link in the description where you can book a free study consultation with one of our high-performing KISS academic tutors. They will help you build a simple but tailored plan that fits exactly for you and actually gets the results you want. And if you like more content like this, feel free to subscribe to the KISS Academics YouTube page. It will help us out a lot in terms of understanding what type of content you guys are after. My final message to you is to continue studying smart, but also take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next one.